Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to view this screencast on the Middle School Accelerated Program for September 2020 through June 2021. My name is Greg Barrett. I'm the Math and Science Supervisor for South Colony School District, and it is my pleasure to present to you the information pertaining to the selection, recommendation, and thus implementation of the accelerated programs in both math and science. Um, Before I get started with the actual presentation, as I always like to do, I would like to start out by saying congratulations to each and every one of the students who have been recommended for this program. This is clearly an indication that you as an individual student, as well as you as a family, have placed the appropriate emphasis and priority upon your academics, and you have obviously understood the value of doing what you can to achieve at a high level. And from the parents' perspective, you have apparently done what is necessary to provide your child the environment that supports their educational efforts and promotes high achievement. So congratulations to all. This is a wonderful event and an opportunity. However, again, as I always like to do, I present this clearly as the beginning of the process. At this present time, truly with regard to acceleration, nothing has been accomplished or completed. This is the onset of the journey, and this is where you start to develop a really clear understanding of the expectations moving forward and understand what we as a district expect from the students that we put into this program and what we expect from families as well, or at least offer to them the opportunity to take advantage of, and if they so choose, therefore what the expectations are moving forward. So with nothing else to add in that regard, I will get started on the program. First intent is to go through the selection criteria that was used to determine which students would be recommended for acceleration in math, thus taking the accelerated algebra curriculum while in 8th grade, or accelerated in earth science, thus taking the earth science regions curriculum during the course of 8th grade. And I know in certain instances, there are those double accelerated students who will actually be included in one or both accelerated classes as 7th graders. So to you, congratulations as well. I will talk to most specifically how this whole program plays out for students looking to go into 8th grade next year. But if there are any specific questions following the presentation regarding a double accelerated student, please don't hesitate to reach out. The selection criteria is as such. At the end of the second quarter, grade 7, we look at all students and we compare your child to their peers. A class rank is an indication of how the student does across all disciplines. It is not just specifically looking at math or science. It is looking at all subject areas. We've learned through experience that because of the demands associated with the accelerated program, we need students who are actually performing at a high academic level across their schedule so that the extra expectations, rigor, and time that is needed to be successful within the accelerated program does not have adverse effects on other subject areas. So we are looking at students who are ranked in the top 1/3 of their class at the time of the evaluation. Attendance is crucial. We emphasize the importance to all students of the need for them to be in school and on time on a regular basis. Within the accelerated program, this becomes even more imperative. We tell students from the get-go, and we're here to tell you this now, within the accelerated program, students are either learning new content on a daily basis, or they are either preparing for an assessment or actually taking an assessment on the criteria that has been learned up until that point. Therefore, absences interfere with their ability to stay on pace with the class. There aren't many instances where there is a day or days during the course of the year where they're not doing something crucial towards their future success. So we emphasize the importance of attendance. We encourage students who are in the accelerated program to please understand days that may have resulted in an absence in the past are days you may have to reconsider and come to school now that you're an accelerated student. Days where you scheduled appointments during the school day, thus missing instructional time, those need to become instances where you now take special time and effort with the support of your parents to schedule those appointments outside of the school day so that it doesn't interfere with either your accelerated classes or your other classes for that matter as well. So attendance is crucial once you're in the accelerated program. So we look for students who have established positive behaviors with regard to being in school on a regular basis. We are mindful that there are unique circumstances that exist. At this present time, obviously, we're forced to do so more than ever before. Children get sick. Those illnesses extend over a period of time, thus resulting in the appropriate decision to stay home for multiple days. Isolated long-term absences, 2, 3, 4 days, where a child is clearly ill and it's best for them to stay home, those are not the types of things that we are considering as a negative reflection on the student's behaviors or attitudes about school. Instead, we're looking for students who are consistently absent a day or so here or there. Throughout the course of the year, they'll miss a day here, they'll miss a day the following week, they'll miss another day. Those are the type of habitual absences that become cause for concern under this circumstance. Clearly, if those are excused absences that are perfectly legitimate and necessary, then once again, we remain reasonable with regard to our evaluation and we look at all circumstances. But if it just happens to be that up through elementary school and the first portion of middle school, they have proven to be someone who likes to take a day off, likes to recharge and catch their breath, we realize that the problems that presents for a student within the accelerated program. So at this point, we begin counseling kids about the ultimate importance of being in school on a regular basis. State assessments. Yes, we do look at both the math and the ELA performance levels, and we are looking for students who across the board are achieving at a high level on this standardized cumulative assessment. So we're looking for students who score 3s or 4s consistently in math and ELA. Again, we've learned through experience that students within the accelerated program have to be good in both math and science, but it also becomes crucial that they have the ability to understand complex, sophisticated problems that they read during the course of the accelerated curriculum, and then also have the ability to clearly express themselves in written form to make sure they're both thorough and clear in an explanation of the process or the concepts that they applied during the course of solving those complex problems. So reading and writing become more and more a part of all of the core disciplines as we progress. So it is important for students to have continued success after entering the accelerated program, that they are strong in both areas, math and ELA or science and ELA. So therefore, we do look at the state assessments in both of those areas. First and second quarter averages in math, science, English, and overall. Again, this speaks to the same point that I made a moment ago. You need to be a good math student to be accelerated in math. You need to be a good science student to be accelerated in science, and you need to be strong in reading and writing in order to be successful in those two disciplines. So this is slightly different from the ranking. Some students' rank is influenced by courses such as those outside the 3 I've mentioned, and therefore they have an elevated rank not as a result of the courses that we're looking to accelerate them in, and therefore we do differentiate between what is your class rank at the end of the second quarter and what are your specific averages in these particular subjects. Sixth grade math, science, end of the year exam. Again, the state assessments are cumulative assessments. They are standardized, but they are an indication of how a student typically performs on those long range assessments that cover the entirety of the curriculum. However, we know over the course of several years that we're not always pleased with the quality and the validity of state assessments. We are a little bit more comfortable with the exams that we develop ourselves. We truly appreciate the alignment between those end of the year exams and what was taught during the course of the year at all grade levels. So we do look at the local exams at the end of sixth grade math and the end of sixth grade science to see how the students perform there. And again, no one of these pieces of criteria is enough really to keep a student out, but the sum total of how they perform in all of these areas is what we look at in the determination of our recommendation. Here is the only piece of the process that I would identify as clearly subjective. Up until this point, we've talked about hard data that is observable and you can easily accumulate off Aspen. But the teacher recommendation is, and what the teachers are asked to do, is look at each individual student as they compare to their grade level peers and rate them in the three areas of motivation, maturity, and ability. Motivation is persistence, okay? It's the student's ability to appreciate the value of strenuous, rigorous, complex concepts and content, the motivation to try and arrive at a solution, and the persistence that if at first they don't succeed, they continue, okay, and make subsequent attempts at arriving at the correct answer. So in a different environment, whether it be Math 7 honors, or Science 7, the teachers are looking at the students and they clearly can identify those that are motivated to learn and work through the challenging concepts, and those who, when it gets difficult, tend to take a step back. So we rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, and we are looking for high marks in each of these. Maturity. How does the student handle the day-to-day responsibilities of being a student? Are they walking through the door on time for class on a regular basis, getting themselves prepared, having the materials that they need, prepared on a regular basis with assignments that were done, whether they be short-term overnight homework assignments or long-term assignments? How do they fulfill the obligations and responsibilities of just being a student? And again, how does their maturity level compare to their peers? And obviously, maturity in a different standpoint is, are they able to handle the concepts, the content, without becoming too silly or without becoming, inappropriate in a classroom environment? So conduct is a part of maturity as well. But we are really looking at the maturity as it pertains to being a student, being on time, being prepared, and being thorough. So, and then ability is critical. We need to make sure that each student has the aptitude to be successful even when the content becomes more and more complex. So we do look at ability, and there are instances with the teacher recommendation where we look at a student who may be lacking the motivation, may be lacking in maturity, but has phenomenal ability. This may be the one area where I would say this student deserves additional consideration, because although they don't have the motivation to work hard at this time, and although they may not demonstrate the maturity to handle a environment where the concepts and content are rigorous and demanding, we know full well they have the ability. And the only way for them to take advantage of that ability is to be in the environment that promotes proper motivation and high levels of maturity. So rather than putting them in an easier environment where they can be successful and still maintain poor habits in motivation and maturity, we tend to consider. There's never any clear-cut, decision based solely on one aspect, but we will consider a student with exceptionally high ability who may have lower scores in the other two areas, and realize that putting them into the accelerated program is the best place for them to develop fully as a student. If we're looking for high scores in this area, we're looking for 9s and 10s. So in the three subjective areas, we're looking for students who are 27, 28, 29, or 30 on an overall score out of 30 points. Homework patterns. Two key words here. Yes, we are looking for kids who do their homework every day. That's the minimum requirement. But for the accelerated program, we're looking for a little bit more than just the minimum. So not only are we looking for students who do their homework consistently, we're looking for students who do it every day, and there is evidence that they were concerned about their success, concerned about the thoroughness of the work that they have done. And in those instances where problems present them the greatest challenge, there's evidence that they did try, perhaps on more than one strategy or more than one method of solution. So oftentimes, students who perhaps aren't being considered for acceleration will show you a homework assignment as a teacher, and it will, show you the numbers that were assigned. And question number 7 may have been the most difficult problem on the homework assignment. And a student who may not be a candidate for acceleration would have question number 7 written, no evidence of work, with the explanation, I didn't get it. I did not understand. A student who's being strongly considered for acceleration might have all of the other questions on the assignment with a little bit of work and an answer, and more often than not, the correct answer. But for question number 7, that really demanding and difficult problem, the accelerated student may have several lines, of work demonstrating multiple attempts. They may have committed an exceptional or a exaggerated amount of time on item number 7 in an effort to find the right answer. And that is evidence of not only homework that is completed on a consistent basis, but even if they don't arrive at the right answer, that is a homework assignment that is considered to be well done. The student understands the purpose of assigning the work, and they work diligently to try and be successful, even on those problems that they ultimately fail to get the correct answer at that time. Why do we emphasize this to such a great extent? Because those are the items, those are the instances that we believe generate the highest degree of learning. When a child struggles, and maybe they struggle mightily to arrive at an answer, the next day, when the teacher goes over that problem and demonstrates the proper method of solution, there is probably something that has an impact on that student where they realize their mistake. And because of the struggle, that minor mistake or significant mistake that they made in their efforts to solve it are going to make an impression on them, and that impression is going to be lasting. And now that most difficult concept is likely the thing that student takes away, that they internalize the most. And it's only because of the time, the effort, and the struggle that they put forth that makes it have such an impression on them and creates such a lasting impression. So consistently well done is the key to what we're looking for in the patterns of how accelerated students complete their work. These are what we consider to be the preliminary recommendations, the criteria that we used that resulted in us sending home a letter recommending your child for acceleration. However, we want to make it perfectly clear, as I indicated earlier, this is not the end of anything. This is the start of the acceleration process. This is the evidence that said these students are definitely deserving of this opportunity. Now that we know they're deserving of the opportunity, and they're aware to a certain extent as a result of this meeting or this year, as a result of this presentation, they are aware of what our standards are. So now moving forward, how do the recommendations and the criteria play out for the foreseeable future? So following the initial criteria, we do look at third and fourth quarter work and final exam performance during seventh grade. So after 2 quarters, we evaluated the criteria. We considered you someone deserving of a recommendation. We set forth the expectations for acceleration, and we tell you that we're going to be looking at third and fourth quarter work and final exam performance. Therefore, what we expect is, if anything, we'd like to see the students who actually may increase their performance now that they know that they are going into the accelerated program as an eighth grader. Obviously, the coronavirus and the shutdown of schools this year have had an adverse effect on our ability to clearly monitor third and fourth quarter progress by the students who were recommended. I know some of you who are watching this presentation, rather than being recommended for acceleration, you in fact received a letter indicating that your child had been identified as a waitlist student. I will quickly summarize what that means. Waitlisted means your teacher, your counselor, your building principal, your grade level principal, Mr. Vardaro or Mr. Leahy, the associate principal, myself, everyone involved in the process truly believes that you are capable of being successful in the accelerator program. But at the time of recommendations, we kind of felt you had not fully put your best foot forward. You hadn't performed to your full potential. We believe you're capable of acceleration, but you're really not meeting the criteria at this present time. You are close, but you need to step it up during the course of the third and fourth quarter so that come the end of the year, we are all once again in agreement that you deserve to be recommended for acceleration. So that's what we do for waitlisted students. We put off the final decision until the end of the third and fourth quarter. Clearly, the spring of 2020 is going to interfere with the manner in which we've done this in the past. Nonetheless, even the students who are recommended for acceleration, we are monitoring your progress through the remainder of the year. So by all accounts, we don't want a single student to drop off as the year progresses. We'd like to see kids mature, demonstrate increased levels of motivation, and have their true ability be obvious to everyone who has the opportunity to evaluate them. For the kids who have been included in the acceleration program, we are really looking at and monitoring that closely. So we will slightly modify our approach this year as a result of Corona, but nonetheless, we continue to monitor student progress, and my suspicion is we're going to find that the kids who were recommended were actively and productively engaged during the course of the shutdown and still are deserving of the recommendation for acceleration. That's yet to be determined at this present time, but we will continue to look. And then we have what we consider our final recommendation. We identify students either at the time of the selection criteria being evaluated or at the end of the year for the waitlisted students. We have recommended them for acceleration. Their parents have accepted the recommendation. They are scheduled into either algebra, earth science regents, or both. And the year begins as eighth graders, and they're finding themselves in accelerated classes that, despite all the proper habits, behaviors, attitudes, perhaps after demonstrating proper levels of motivation, maturity, utilizing the assistance and support that is available, doing their homework on a consistent basis, and it's consistently well done, they're finding this to be too great a struggle. All the proper habits, behaviors are in place, and they're still having a difficult time being successful. We evaluate all of those students throughout the course of the first quarter, and any student who is proving to struggle to too great an extent will be reevaluated throughout the course of that first quarter. And at the end of the first quarter, each year we have reason to consider a change by moving a student or a small group of students out of accelerated algebra or out of accelerated earth science and back into either Math 8 or Science 8. If that happens to be the case, our expectations are that we will have had considerable conversation with the student. We will have had considerable conversation with the parents and or guardian, notifying them of the situation. And as indicated, we will look and take into consideration the grade at the end of the first quarter, and then make a final decision with all parties involved aware of and involved in the decision. So we do continue the recommendations through the end of the first quarter. Some kids just find the additional step to be a little bit more than they're ready for at this present time. But each year we have reason to consider students, but I can't say that each year we do move kids out of the accelerated program and back into a regular class, but we certainly do have instances to discuss it and consider it. So next year will be no different. So that in its entirety is what has led us to this point and what will continue to be a part of the process moving forward. Now I'd like to just look specifically at each of the programs. How does being in the accelerated program impact a student, their schedule, and what our expectations are? Here is a grid outlining the two paths that are currently available. The standard path for a student to remain in Math 8 and then follow the Regents curriculum throughout the high school, or the accelerated path. I will go year by year and differentiate between the standard and the accelerated, thus going through the entire program from 8th grade through 12th grade graduation. Standard program, Math 8, as we well know, Math and ELA have state administered assessments in the spring. Students in Math 8 will be expected to take the grade 8 New York State math exam in either April or May. And then at the end of the year, there is a locally generated final exam that is administered that takes into account all of that content that follows the state assessment in April and or May, but also includes the content covered from September through April. So that's a local final, very accustomed to doing that each year, progressing up through 7th grade. In the accelerated path, the curriculum is different. Instead of Math 8, the students will be taking next generation accelerated algebra. In place of the New York State math exam, these students will take the Regents exam in June. So in fact, the Regents exam replaces the state administered standardized test, and it replaces the locally developed summative exam in June that the Math 8 students take. The Regents exam is both the standardized test administered by the state and the test that is used as the final exam for the course. Results from accelerated Regents classes do go on a student's high school transcript. They do show up as an accelerated class that was taken while in 8th grade. Nonetheless, the credits that are earned go towards developing the transcript that will ultimately be evaluated upon graduation from high school. So I want you to be aware of that from the onset. If a student does not take the New York State Math 8 exam, I would like you to understand the state affords 4 districts to make the decision to waive that exam. They understand the reason we've waived that exam is because the student will be taking a different state administered test, and therefore the state in their calculations looks at the Regents result and then transfers that Regents result into an appropriate score on the Math 8 exam that the district is evaluated by, the individual student is not. So it goes into the accountability score that the district receives, but the Regents exam just shows up as an item on the student's final transcript and on their high school transcript. So it's just logistics of how we manage having students not take the state assessment in April, but in place take the Regents exam in June. That concept is applicable in the area of science as well. Moving forward, you'll take a look in 9th grade. In the standard track, students take algebra. It's the same course as the accelerated kids would have taken during 8th grade. It culminates with a Regents exam in June. However, it's in June of their 9th grade year as opposed to June of their 8th grade year. Accelerated students move on to the high school. They are scheduled for accelerated geometry. Each of the Regents exams has each of the Regents courses has an associated Regents exam that is administered in June. I will clarify there are two separate items that are entered onto student transcripts, and this is not, or nor was it the case when individuals my age or close to my age were in school. So I'm assuming most parents are somewhere in the neighborhood of my generation. So when we were in school, you could take the exam, pass the exam, and that offered you credit for both the exam and the course. Now, these students are required to have success both in the classroom by passing the class during all 4 quarters, and then they are obligated to pass the exam as well. The exam does not afford student credit in any Regents course any longer simply by passing the exam. So there are 2 marks that actually go on to the student transcript, final school mark in the course and the Regents exam grade. And both of those must be passing in order for the students to meet the Regents requirements towards graduation. So the nice thing about accelerated geometry is we have the ability each year to schedule these sections so that they are exclusively 9th grade students. So it is truly accelerated in that they're taking it a year early, and it remains to be accelerated in that they are in a classroom environment with like-minded peers, students who are still acclimating themselves to the high school, but nonetheless are expecting themselves to perform at a high level in the area of math. So it's nice to have these kids have the ability to stay together as a group of accelerated 9th grade math students and have that be something that eases their transition to the high school. However, 9th grade is the last time we have the opportunity to keep them together as exclusively accelerated students. They will remain on an accelerated path, but they will start to have students of other grade levels in classes with them after 9th grade. Moving on, we look at the 10th grade year. Standard track, as you might expect. Next Generation Geometry is the course. Next Generation Geometry Regents is the exam that they take in June. Standard students take the same courses as the accelerated students take just a year after, and on, as indicated, on a standard path. Accelerated students, they're taking Next Generation Algebra 2 as a 10th grader, and they are taking the Algebra 2 Regents exam in June. The difference now is as 10th graders, they are accelerated, but they may be in a class that contains 11th graders from the standard track, or possibly even 12th graders who are retaking a course in order to complete the sequence in math. And just to be clear, a sequence in math is successful completion of algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, passing both the class and the Regents exam. You must complete the sequence in math in order to be eligible for an advanced Regents diploma. Our expectation is that all accelerated students will strive as a minimum to achieve an advanced Regents diploma. So our experience has been that they do so at a very, very high level of success. The percentage of our accelerated students 2 years after the fact who are still performing at a high level in Algebra 2 and completing the sequence is somewhere in the high 90s. We do a very good job of identifying the candidates, and they do a very good job of persisting and staying on track and consistently performing at a high level. I'll get back to that point in a moment as well once we look at 12th grade. So we've now completed Algebra 2. For the standard track, obviously the 11th graders who have experienced success in algebra and geometry now move on to Algebra 2, take the Algebra 2 Regents exam in June. The accelerated students have now completed the Regents curriculum, and they move on to pre-calculus. Pre-calculus is a university in the high school course. It does have a local midterm and a local final exam that are administered each year. But this actually does afford students who take advantage of the opportunity the potential to receive college credit. So I will not go into great detail about that. That's a couple of years down the road, and there will be ample opportunity for you to discuss with teachers, counselors, or administrators at the high school level. But I would like to make you aware at this stage that we begin having the opportunity to not only build our high school transcript, but actually start to contribute to our college transcript as early as 11th grade for those students who remain in the accelerated program. Moving forward to 12th grade, those students who continue to persist on a standard path, all students are expected to take 4 years of math. So if they have successfully completed the Regents requirements of algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, they will either take pre-calculus, and they'll have the option of taking that in their 12th grade year for college credit, or one of the many math electives that are available at the high school as well. Again, we emphasize the importance for all students to remain engaged and actively participating in math throughout their high school experience, because past experience tells us all students will be required to either satisfy the math requirement at the college level through AP or college level courses that they took in high school, or they'll be required to take a math class once they arrive in college. Therefore, the best way to be successful in college is to take math consistently throughout high school right up until your 12th grade year. So here I am talking to 7th grade students and the parents and guardians of 7th graders, and I am clearly indicating that if you choose the path of the accelerated program, our expectations right now is that these families are making a family decision to commit to not only success while in 8th grade in accelerated algebra, but continued success, continued high achievement throughout their high school experience that results in them scheduling themselves into an AP course, or at least one of the other math electives that is available. At this present time, our retention within the accelerated program is that on average, 87% of the students that we accelerate at the end of 7th grade persist within the accelerated track and do register and attend classes their senior year in the AP Calculus program. So we believe in our criteria because not only does it result in success during 8th grade, but the students who take advantage of the opportunity in 8th grade continue to experience success throughout their high school experience, ultimately resulting in them taking a college level course. And at this time, it would be their second college level course before graduating high school. So there is a discrepancy between AP courses and university and the high school courses. Again, I will leave the specifics of that to high school counselors, high school teachers, and or administrators, rather than going into too great a detail at this time. So that's an overview of the math program. Now let's take a look at what the science program looks like. And please make note, there are considerable differences. And I'll point those out as clearly as I can. And what you might see is that the color coordination of the courses within this chart already begin to identify the differences. So, standard track in 8th grade, grade 8 Earth Science. The nice thing about our program is, regardless of whether you're accelerated or not in science, you are taking the same curriculum during the course of your grade 8 experience. The differences are this. The accelerated Regents Earth Science goes in much greater detail and depth into the curriculum, and accelerated Regents Earth Science is a high school course which means that there is a lab requirement. Therefore, each of the accelerated science students are scheduled to a science class every day and a science lab period every other day, either odd days or even days. Therefore, on certain days, there are 2 science classes in their schedule. One is the traditional class, and the other is the lab period. As often as possible, and I'll get to some of the details, we try to schedule those classes so that they run consecutively. So it's a period 1 class, a period 2 lab every other day. The limitations and restrictions within the middle school schedule do not always make that possible for all students, but I'll get back to that momentarily. So, in standard 8th grade Earth Science, the students will take the intermediate level science exam. The way this state exam differs from math is that this is actually an assessment of the entirety of the middle school science program. So it's taken into consideration the life science that they learned in grade 5, the physical science and life science that they learned in grade 6, the physical science that they learned in grade 7, and the earth science that they learned in grade 8. So they take that exam in the performance piece of it, which is a lab performance portion of the test. They take throughout the month of May, and then there is a written portion of that exam that they take in June. Again, it's a program assessment, not just a grade 8 assessment. The accelerated track, those students once again have the grade 8 intermediate level science test waived. They in turn take the Earth Science Regents exam in June. The Earth Science Regents exam is then translated over to an appropriate grade on the intermediate level science test that is used for the sake of accountability for the building or for the district. We are just trying to eliminate the over testing or dual testing of students during the course of a single year. Please make note, although it's not evident on this chart, there is a final exam for grade 8 Earth Science. The Regents exam takes the place of that final exam for the students who are on the accelerated path. Now, as we look to grade 9, here is the most dramatic difference between math and science. Regardless of whether or not you're accelerated, every student in South Colony, with the possibility of only a few exceptions, every student in South Colony is scheduled into Regents Living Environment during 9th grade. So accelerated 8th graders and standard course 8th graders will end up in the same 9th grade science class. They will take the same Regents Living Environment curriculum, and they will take the same Living Environment Regents exam in June. So that, as you know from the previous discussion, is a dramatic difference between science and math. However, the differences then continue into 10th grade. Standard track takes the students who were in grade 8 Earth Science, now puts them into Regents Earth Science, now gives them that lab period that they did not have as an 8th grader. They go into greater depth, they go into greater detail, they have the 1,200 minutes of lab time required, which is the minimum required for any student in any science course to be eligible to take the Regents exam at the end of the year. You must meet the state mandated minutes in lab in order to make yourself eligible to take science Regents exams. So just so we know, 1,200 minutes sounds like a lot. It is easily attainable in both the middle school environment and the high school environment through the alternating every other day lab structure that we have in place. So standard track, Regents Earth Science in 10th grade. Accelerated track, obviously these kids do not need to take Regents Earth Science. So they then go on to Regents Chemistry. Again, chemistry exam administered at the end of the school year. Both successful completion of the course and successful completion of the exam are required in order for the students to gain credit for both on their transcript. Moving on to grade 11, standard track goes into chemistry, accelerated track goes into physics. As a student in high school, my guidance counselor said to me, any student who hopes to be someone later on in life as an adult who owns a home and likes to be able to do things, fix things, understand how things work and operate, okay, just to be someone who is considered handy within their own home environment, benefits as a result of taking a course like Regents level physics. I have found that to be true. My interactions and discussions with former students indicates to me that they value the opportunity that physics offers them and the content and the information that it provided. So we prioritize the opportunity to get our accelerated kids into physics as early in their high school experience as possible. So this is a great thing about this, getting them into Regents physics as 11th graders, and thus opening up a vast array of possibilities during their senior year. So moving on to 12th grade, again, we're going to encourage standard track students to continue on and take a 4th year of science as 12th graders. It is a South Colony local requirement that we want kids to take science and math throughout their high school experience. So we're going to encourage them to either take Regents physics, which has the subsequent Regents exam, or they have the ability to take certain electives, which may not be the Regents physics, or we have numerous students who, because they value the opportunities that are available to them in our elective program, they will actually concurrently enroll in Regents physics to complete the sequence in science, the Regents sequence, and at the same time, take one of the many electives. And as you can see, I have some of those listed here. We have AP Chem, AP Bio, AP Physics. We have forensics, anatomy and physiology. We have astronomy. We have other courses as well. Again, I don't like to get too far ahead of myself. The curriculum guide is available online. You have the ability to look into the variety of electives, but that's certainly further down the road. And it's not something that you necessarily need to concern yourselves with now, but I do want you to understand the benefits and the potential challenges that are present if you don't take advantage of the accelerated path, or if you do take advantage of the accelerated offering, then you understand and realize the potential to take full advantage of everything that is offered through our high school science program. So the accelerated students in large numbers fill up our AP courses, taking advantage of any or all based on their success in the Regents courses. So if I was a really outstanding Regents chemistry student, I'm looking to go on to perhaps a science-related field, AP Chem would be a very practical choice during my senior year, or any and all of the electives at the high school are appropriate courses as these high-achieving students look to prepare themselves for college. That wraps up both of the programs. Now I'd just like to talk specifically and emphasize a couple of key points about Regents Earth Science. Expectations are to have excellent school attendance. We talked about that. Complete your labs and your assignments thoroughly and on time. So this is an added piece. In addition to homework that stems from your regular class instruction, the content of Earth Science that is presented to you, there are then the weekly lab assignments that you must complete. So normally you've got, let's say, a lab day on Monday. You conduct the lab during the course of the lab period. You are now expected to complete the write-up and submit that at a later date. Again, the only way that the state monitors the successful completion of the 1,200-minute requirement is through the successful completion of the lab write-ups that are associated with each of those lab periods. So the lab is a critical component of the science program that differentiates it from the math program. I've already touched on labs are held every other day for one class period when possible. Those are scheduled back to back. It is not always possible, but we understand that the benefit of giving the teachers flexibility, that if interested, they can utilize back-to-back periods, which stretches across two 40-minute classes plus 4 minutes passing time in between, 84-minute block of time that perhaps the lesson may take more than the required or the available 40 minutes, or perhaps the lab requires a little bit more than 40 minutes. The back-to-back periods offer flexibility. Unfortunately, we are not always able to do that in every instance, but we will do it as often as possible. Because of the extra period associated with science, something has to give. So what happens to be the case is accelerated science students in our middle school have a lab every other day in place of TAP. So that does mean that a traditional study hall is not available to our accelerated science students, assuming they take full advantage of all of the other opportunities that are available to them. So this is an area where you may have a need to follow up with me, but I'm making it clear at this time, even though you do not have a TAP period as an accelerated middle school student, I comfortably and confidently say that there aren't any teachers in the district. There may be some who are comparable, but there are not any teachers in the district who are more available throughout the course of the year than the teachers in both the accelerated math and the accelerated science program. So even though there is not a TAP period in the student schedule, the accelerated teachers go to great lengths to try and accommodate individuals or small groups of students. And clearly they're available on a regular basis after school. But there are also those instances, which is left on a teacher by teacher basis, where they will make accommodations within the course of the school day whenever possible to get students the additional support needed, perhaps at a particular time, whether it be in regard to a lab, something covered in class, whatever the case may be. So there's not a TAP period, but there's ample opportunity to get the help you need. Regents Science High School credit will be earned upon successful completion of the course and the Regents exam. I've emphasized that in both areas, math and science. So there's nothing different there, but we do try and re-emphasize points throughout the presentation so that we come away absolutely clear on what the expectations are. Kind of a summary of what I've presented, and my apologies. Hopefully we have the ability to start, stop, pause, and get back to this presentation if it proves to be a little bit too much in a single sitting. Nonetheless, we do like to summarize. What, in fact, have we laid out for you to consider, and what is it that we hope you are understanding and taking advantage of? The behaviors and attitudes of successful accelerated students. Let me remind you again, at this present time, you are not accelerated students. You have been recommended as such based on your performance up to this point in the process, or to this point in your educational and academic process. So now, in order to be a successful accelerated student, these are the things we will continue to look for. And in fact, we will look for improvement now that you are an accelerated student and not just a candidate for acceleration. So be dedicated and committed, not to me, not to your teacher, not to anything else other than your own education. Prioritize and value the importance of high academic achievement. The people who are most successful in this world are those who take full advantage of the wonderful opportunities that are presented to them sporadically or periodically through their lives. The education that is being offered to you, not just through the accelerator program, but the entirety of what's being offered, is a fantastic opportunity for every student to set themselves up for a comfortable and rewarding life. And I consider academics and your education to be the one thing that perhaps most consistently benefits people as they move forward through life. So I want accelerated students who demonstrate a dedication and a commitment to their own well-being. And that's by prioritizing their high level of performance and achievement in an educational and academic environment. Maintain a high class average in the accelerated program and maintain a high class average in your other courses as well. You can't start making value judgments about, well, my accelerated class is going on my high school transcript, so I have to prioritize that, and therefore I can start sloughing off in other areas. That is not truly going to lead to success, and that's not evidence of being dedicated and committed. So maintain a class high average, and if anything at this point, we'd like to see you realize this is a fantastic opportunity. I'm going to start doing better, and my average is actually going to go up, even though the expectations and the demands and the rigor have increased. Seek extra help as often as needed. This is a critical component. I cannot overstate the importance of how this is worded. Yes, accelerated students, high achieving students need extra help. Accelerated students, we'd be failing you if we didn't present you all with content that challenges you to perhaps a greater extent than you've been challenged before. However, asking for extra help as often as it is needed is what I really want to clarify at this moment. Students who perhaps aren't candidates for acceleration will have a tendency to go into a teacher and say, I need help. And the teacher says, with what? And it's not uncommon for a student who's not being considered for acceleration to go, everything. I don't get it. I don't understand. Well, what don't you understand? I don't understand anything. All right. That's not a child who needs extra help. That's a child who needs some clarification of what their expectations are as a student. They need to ask questions during the course of class. They need to get points in their notes clarified. They need to be an active participant in the learning when it is being offered, rather than going and saying, I missed everything that you presented yesterday and now I need help. What we're looking for from accelerated students is a student who perhaps has, let's use, for example, a homework assignment. They sat through class, they participated, they were actively involved as well as actively engaged. They may have even asked questions of clarification during the course of the lesson. They go home, they engage in a homework assignment. They find a question or a few questions on their homework assignment to be really challenging. They're not sure where they went wrong. And even during the course of class today, they saw the explanation, but they can't quite differentiate what they did from what was the actual intended method of solution. They go in, very pointed, very specific questions, and perhaps in a matter of only a few minutes, they bring the question to the teacher points out their misunderstanding, they see their mistake, they realize where they got off track, they now understand the difference between what they were doing and what they should have done. They know why they made the mistake they made, but they don't, they also understand why it was a mistake. And they're now much clearer about the complex concept that was challenging them. And maybe after 10, 15 minutes, they're no longer in need of extra help and they're able to leave. Now, that's the ideal situation. That's not what we expect, nor is it what we experience on every instance, but understanding you should not need extra help on a daily basis if you are truly an accelerated student. You are going to work, okay, to your highest degree possible. You are going to participate to a reasonable extent in each class that you attend. You're going to ask questions as needed, and then you're going to ask for extra help as needed. All right. And I will reemphasize again, when you need help, it is available. But when you need help, it should only be after you've tried to take advantage and utilize the other resources that you have available to you. The learning that took place during class, the notes that were provided, the examples that were offered that leading up to the one that gave you difficulty, and perhaps even consulting with a classmate who tried to help you figure it out. And now you go and see the teacher and say, I don't get it. Can you clarify? That is seeking extra help, and it's doing so as often as is needed. And you know you need it because all other methods failed to help you understand. That leads directly into producing quality homework. I talked about it. I won't overemphasize this. Nonetheless, I have to make sure you realize we are emphasizing this to a great extent. Quality homework consistently every day. It's assigned, you do it. And when you do it, you put your best foot forward. You show your teacher, and again, you show yourself that you're capable of quality work, and you do it on a daily basis. And that doesn't always mean you get everything right, but you put considerable and appropriate effort into getting it right. And that's what quality homework is. And then, as is the case in every single class, every day, you're attending class regularly and on time. If new learning and new content that is demanding, okay, that is complex, that is challenging, is being presented every day, then you need to be in class every day that it is possible. All right. So please understand that's important for you to be successful. And all of these things have ultimately the student's best interest in mind. This is what experiences have told us are necessary. So we are simply telling you, as parents and students, this is what you're considering when you look at that form and consider sending it back as an indication you'd like to take advantage. Very quickly, if you are recommended, you have a slip. That slip tells you what you've been recommended for. You can only accept the course that you have been recommended for. So if you were recommended for algebra, check off that you'd like to accept that, send it back. If you were recommended for only science, check off that you'd like to take advantage of the Earth Science Regents course, send it back, sign it and send it back. If you've been recommended for both and you want to take advantage of both, check off that you're taking advantage of and choosing both of those and send the slip back. If you received a letter that indicates you have been waitlisted for either one or both of the courses, there is nothing that you need to do at this present time. We will take the list of waitlisted students. We will look back. We will monitor and evaluate how you've conducted yourself during the third and fourth quarter, which this particular year means during the shutdown. And we will come to a decision as to what we consider to be in your best interest moving forward. And you will be notified near the end of the year if the waitlist determination has resulted in a recommendation or if the waitlist determination has been removed and we now have made the decision that you will be scheduled into the standard track of either Math 8 or Science 8. So with that said, this concludes my presentation. And under normal circumstances, this would now provide the opportunity for you to ask questions directly of me, or as is the case each year, the teachers from the Accelerator program are usually present during the course of this presentation. Unfortunately, questions now will have to come in the form of either emails to myself or phone calls directly to myself. And I will provide for you my number in the office is 518-458-6052. I am in the office on a fairly regular basis because of the kind of the isolated nature of my office. I'm able to be in the building without presenting a threat to anyone else, nor are they really in close contact with me at any time throughout the course of the day. So they are not presenting a threat for me. So you can reach me at the office, or I will actually make my cell phone, my personal cell phone, available. If the best way for you to get in touch with me is via phone, you can reach me at 518-229-2934. Thank you for taking the time, demonstrating the patience to go through the entirety of this presentation. I value this opportunity tremendously. I'm sick over the fact that I didn't get the chance to meet with you this year face to face. I will stay in contact with your child throughout the course of next year, but I also monitor their progress throughout the course of their high school experience. I am available throughout the course of 8th grade for questions and concerns that come up that can't necessarily be answered by the classroom teacher, but I always love the opportunity to see the kids face to face, to see the parents face to face. So please, if your child is not sitting with you at the time, please offer them the opportunity and go a step further and require that they take advantage of this. Listen to what we had to say, understand what a wonderful opportunity this is, and encourage them to believe that this is what's best for them, if in fact that is the case, and realize we're looking for a decision that stretches across 4 or 5 years of their academic experience, not just next year. And like I said from the onset, this is more than just a student decision or more than just a parental decision. This is a family decision and a family commitment to prioritize academics and continue to do things and achieve at the levels that have been attained up until this point. So with that said, I look forward to your questions and the opportunity to speak to you. I thank you. And if you have not had the opportunity to return your forms to school, my recommendation to you is, if you have the ability to do so, take a picture of the signed form and simply send it to me as an attachment to an email. And again, my name is Greg Barup. My email address is barupg@scolony.org. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to meeting with you and working with your child in the future.